Silas Pembroke tore open the canvas and cried out as he wrote. The tent was a thin skin between a man and the world, pale light pooling on rough cloth, the air thick with sour salves, coffee steam, and the wet breath of the wounded. Outside, distant drums answered a shell that hissed like a hornet in a rain barrel. Silas lay flat on a straw bed, his legs stiff with fever and the dull ache of a bull wound crawling down from his thigh, a heat rising in his chest that tasted of iron and smoke. The air smelled of antiseptic and old engine oil, of leather boots and sour bread. He pressed his pen into the page and began to write, the ink thick as old blood, each stroke a small swear against the inexorable dark. Hour 1. The first hour is a knife in the night, he thinks, the wound now a steady ache that never leaves. He steadies his breath and says aloud, to no one but the memory of a wife 100 miles away. Eleanor, if you can read this, I am still here. The nurse, a stout woman named Mabel, smooths a blanket at his feet and asks, what will you tell her first, Sergeant? He answers softly, tell her I am alive enough to love her and that I count the days by pages, not hours. A faint smile touches his lips, the sort that doesn't reach his eyes. Hour 2. Heat climbs. He tastes copper on his tongue when he swallows, and a chill runs down his spine as the wound seems to breathe with him. The room smells of boiled linseed, of burnt coffee, of a hot iron pressed to skin. If I write enough pages, he says to the ceiling, perhaps she will forgive the words I cannot say. Aloud, Eleanor's name sits on the tip of his tongue like a rung on a ladder. He cannot quite reach. Hour 3. The doctor arrives with a clay jar of water and a bottle of something that stings a little when it slides down the throat. Keep your head up, Pembroke, Dr. Reed says, a scientist's calm in a battlefield of fear. The infection moves, and with it, a war you do not see. Silas nods, though his head aches with a pressure that makes the world tilt. Eleanor's voice returns to him, not in sound, but in memory. The fiddle where she played the tune of their first kiss. The window she pressed her face to when he left for the war. The soft press of her mouth when she said his name like a prayer. Hour 4. The beginning of what will become 40 pages. He writes with a purpose that makes his fingers forget the ache in his leg for a moment. He forms the first line of a long letter, the kind that takes the shape of a person's life. My dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this, I am still alive enough to tell you what I fear most and what I treasure most. The air is damp with the smell of damp wool and the sour tang of bad meat that somehow keeps the room from ever being clean. The words spill out with effort, but they come out honest, as if he is laying down a map of his own heart for someone to follow home. Hour 5. A cough rattles in his chest, and the room seems to sway like a ship in a storm. Mabel, the nurse, presses a cool cloth to his forehead, whispering, steady, Silas, steady. He looks at her, and for a moment the war is nothing but a man and a caregiver, and the sea of pain around them becomes something like a window. Tell her, he whispers, half to Eleanor and half to his own fear, that I kept my promise to come back to her in spirit, if not in body. The ink dries a slow, stubborn line on the page. Hour 6. The first hour ends with a quiet that feels almost holy. The wound aches as if it remembers every mile he ever walked and then regretted. The lamp throws yellow halos on the paper, and he exhales slow, counting his breaths as if counting soldiers. I would trade this page for a kiss from you, Eleanor, he mutters. And a memory, her laughter across a kitchen table. A candle guttering softens the edge of pain for a breath or two. Hour 7. He composes a sentence he will repeat in many ways later. I will tell you of the simple, stubborn love that keeps a man alive when the body betrays him. The wound is a hollow thing now, a place the fever climbs out of, and the smell of carbolic and burnt sugar hangs in the air like a fog. Write it, Eleanor's voice seems to say, and his hand moves, stubborn as a horse that knows the beat of its own heart. Hour 8. The doctor checks the bandages, removing a crust of dried blood and a thread of dirty cotton. The scent of iodine fills the air, sharp and clean next to the rotten sweetness of gangrene just around the corner. He whispers to Silas, We'll keep you comfortable, son. If the fever breaks, we'll know you've got time to tell your wife the truth. Silas weighs those words. Time. How heavy it becomes when you're counting pages instead of days. Hour 9. He writes a memory of their wedding night, the small lamp in their parlor, the sound of rain tapping on the glass. He describes Eleanor's hands, the way they moved when she stitched a seam, the way she spoke to him in soft syllables that sounded like rain on slate. The memory is a balm, a white-hot ember in a chest full of ash. He checks the corner of the page. There is room for more. Hour 10. The fever thickens the air, and he feels the world shrinking to the size of this tent, this bed, this page. A voice Dr. Reed's pronounces a name, Gangrene, and the word tastes like rotten fruit in the back of his mouth. "We'll keep you going," the doctor adds. But Silas sees in his eye a quiet calculation, a fierce determination to prolong a life that is slipping away in slow, deliberate hours. He writes faster now because the hour demands it, as if the hour itself were a soldier standing in line. Hour 11. A knock at the tent flap. A courier with a folded letter from home. The first letters Eleanor has sent since the last weepful mail day. Silas leans as best he can, a sound like a sigh escaping him, and the nurse reads the words aloud, a voice that belongs to a world he left behind. "Dear Silas," Eleanor writes, "the children ask for you at night. The old dog waits by the gate, and I'm counting the seconds until your voice comes back to me." He answers with a tremor in his hand. "Tell them I hear the dog's bark in every drum of the marching hooves." The page fills with his careful script, steady despite the tremor that crawls across his skin. Hour 12. The night gathers, and the world outside is a chorus of rifles and the far-off roar of cannon. He hears men cry out in the distance, but in the tent the only sound is the careful rasp of his pen and the soft breath of Eleanor in his mind. "If I fail," he writes, "promise me you will remember how we began. A letter passed between two stubborn souls who swore they would wait for the other, no matter what." A nurse asks if he wants water. He nods, and the water glitters in the tin cup as he tilts it. "To you, my love," he says, his voice a thread. "To you, Eleanor, always you." Hour 13. The second night settles. The lamp oil grows tired. The paper grows weary of ink. He counts the lines between his words as if counting breath between lovers. The 40 pages he will fill in total are not just a sum of pages, but a record of a vow kept while the body forgot the world. He writes, and in the margin he adds a small postscript. "If you read this aloud to the wind, pretend I speak softly by your shoulder." The doctor leans close and asks if he's comfortable. Silas replies with a wry smile, "As comfortable as a man can be in a tent that is half hospital, half home." Hour 14. The leg aches with a new, greedy hunger, pain that gnaws at him with every move of the chest. He sweats in beads, and the smell of damp wool turns the air sour. "Eleanor," he whispers into the ear of the page, "I am not afraid of the dark. Only of the pages not yet written. A memory surfaces, unbidden, the first time they spoke of forever. Across a table, a road beyond the city, a future that seemed a salt-sweet blessing." He writes it down with a stubborn clarity that comes when nothing else remains. Hour 15. A sudden sharp chill drives him to the edge of the bed. The fever breaks for an instant and returns with a heavy, wet breath. The nurse steadies him, talking in a low voice about the slows, the slow shift of hours into days, the slow burn of the wound into the deeper shadows. "We'll ease you," she says, and he nods, mouthing the words as if they were prayers. The page welcomes his breath again, a line forming at the bottom, a vow to his wife that will outlast the fever. Hour 16. He writes a memory of their first night in the city tavern, the way warmth pressed into cold air, and 100 tiny promises drifted between them like fireflies. The room grows more quiet, as if the world has moved to a slower drumbeat. "Eleanor," he writes, "if I am to die here, let this be the last thing you know. I loved you more than the war could teach me, and more than pain could erase." The ink dries, leaving a future folded in the crease of a letter that will travel far. Hour 17. The infection nurtures a sour smell that clings to the linen and to his skin, and he realizes the body can lie with you and still have its own truth. He rests his hand on the coverlet, feeling the rough weave beneath his fingers. "Tell me if you hear him in the drum," he says to Mabel, meaning the far-off march that makes the ground tremble beneath the tent. She does not smile, but she offers a quiet warmth, an anchor in the storm. Hour 18. The second day glides to a close with a sight that catches his breath. A bluebird alights on the edge of the tent, a bright, fragile thing that reminds him of Eleanor's laughter in spring. He writes quickly, as if the bird will carry his words away on its wings. "I swear to you, Eleanor," he writes, the words catching in his throat, "I will keep faith with the home you dream of, even if I cannot walk there myself." The page holds these lines. The leaf rustles with the wind, hour 19. The medical talk between nurse and doctor becomes more clinical, a language of percentages and thresholds. Gangrene travels, Dr. Reed says, but so does hope if we hold the line. Silas watches the doctor measure the swelling, the pale color of the skin, the way the bandages puff with each exhale. He writes a confession to Eleanor about a fear he rarely speaks aloud. What if he forgets how to love her when his body forgets how to live? He writes, and the ink answers back with a stubborn, bright truth. Hour 20. The night grows thick with wind, and the creeping scent of sour leaves burning somewhere else in the field. A moth lands on the edge of the lamp's flame and claps its wings, a tiny explosion of ash. Silas whispers to the page, "Forgive me for the stories I tell you in the dark. They are the only stories I can truly own." The words form, almost as if someone else is holding his hand, guiding the pen with a quiet, careful intention. Hour 21. He reaches for the second bundle of pages that lie stacked near the bed, a promise, not yet fulfilled, that there would be 40 pages in total by the time the letter to his wife was complete. He checks the count, 1, 2, 3, and the page shivers as if it understands the weight of what is being asked of it. "Stay with me," he tells the papers. The ink, the dream of a home that will be his wife's to read when the last hour of his life is spoken aloud. Hour 22. A cold finger of fear taps at the back of his neck. He knows the leg will fail him sooner than the heart does, but the mind refuses to yield its tasks. He dictates a memory of their first child, a brief glimpse of a future that might have been, and he writes with a sudden fierce tenderness, "If I have to go, let this family remain intact in your hands." The nurse's voice steadies him, translating the tremor into a line that will comfort Eleanor in her solitude. Hour 23. Night deepens. The lamp's oil is nearly spent, the light shrinking to a yellow bubble that trembles on the page. He describes the soft press of his wife's hands, the way she would cry softly if she saw him now, the way she would smile if she heard his breath still speaking through the letter. The words fill the margins, and the margins fill with more words. The 40 pages begin to become a map of a life and a letter at once. Hour 24. The first day ends with a final, stubborn resolve to complete the night's writing. To set down the memory of the day he learned the phrase, "Home is where the heart is," and to lay aside fear as if it were a cloak that finally grows too heavy to wear. He looks at the ceiling and says to Eleanor, "I am still here, and I am still loving you." The ink makes a soft rasp as it dries, a whisper that says, "This is the start of your coming to me." The river of hours continues, unbothered by the world's impatience, as Silas moves from hour to hour with the same stubborn resolve to fill the 40 pages. The age and the fever blur together, a watercolor of pain and tenderness, of longing and duty. Yet every breath is a sentence he commits to the letter. Hour 25. The second day finds him deeper in the work. The pages number themselves in his mind. He thinks of Eleanor in her kitchen, the steam from the kettle, the way she would lean toward the window to scan the road. "If I cannot walk beside you," he writes, "I will walk beside you in every word I left behind." The nurse sets a tin cup to his lips. He tastes bitter herbs and old wine and says nothing but nods, listening to the world as if it were a friend who can speak only in drums. Hour 26. The wound sings a hollow song, a note that climbs into his skull and stays. He tries to get out a memory of a day they'd watched rain together, the way rain makes melodies in the gutters of a small town, the way a promise can be kept by a single honest act. He writes about the moment the couple planned a future they would never fully realize, a moment now nearly tangible in the air of the tent, a future that is the reason the pages exist at all. Hour 27. The hum of the lamp grows louder, as if the flame itself is listening to his confession. He speaks out loud to Eleanor and to the doctor, in a language of the heart more than the tongue. "I love you with a stubborn, unyielding love, the kind that cannot be weighed, only proven by the waiting, A gust of wind rattles the canvas, and the scent of rain on earth comes through, carrying with it the memory of a porch in their old town, of a swing, of a life not yet broken. Hour 28. He returns to a remembered image of their wedding day, the crowd, his hesitant smile, Eleanor's eyes bright with a hopeful glow. He writes, "If this letter could carry a fraction of your light, it would be enough to guide me home." The bandages pull a little as his muscles twitch, and he clenches the pen so hard his knuckles whiten. He writes the lines that will serve as a vow and a farewell, and not just a description of a man in pain. Hour 29. The wound seems to shift again, moving through his body with a slow, creeping insistence. He is aware of every sound, the whisper of Mabel's footfalls, the soft creak of the tent, the distant shout of a soldier's laughter somewhere beyond the canvas. He writes of fear and courage, of perseverance and surrender, and of the way a wife loves a man even beyond the grave of a single hour. Hour 30. The pages accumulate, a small forest of paper around him. He numbers a few lines in the margin. 1. Love's stubborn oath. 2. Home remembered. 3. Hope of letters crossing the miles. 4. The fear of the last page. The doctor visits and mutters, "If we can slow the decline, we can finish the letter." Silas answers with a whisper, "Finish it for her. And for me, let her know the truth I cannot speak aloud." Hour 31. He writes of the day they met, of a handshake that then became a kiss in a rain-soaked street, of the vow to protect her in the face of danger. The memory is almost a prayer now, a call and response with the paper that holds a life. He turns a page and continues, a voice inside him counting each breath as a line, each line as a step toward a home he cannot yet reach. Hour 32. The fever returns with a ferocity that makes the lamp tremble. He clutches the edge of the bed and whispers, "Eleanor, I am slipping, but I am writing. I am keeping you safe with words." Mabel dabs his brow with a damp cloth, and for a moment the tent is a sanctuary, where time folds itself into the shape of a letter. Hour 33. The doctor breathes a measured word. "If the infection travels this way, we risk losing the leg and the life." He nods to Silas, who smiles with a quick, dry humor that doesn't quite mask the pain. "Then let me write faster," Silas says, the words catching in his throat, "before the fire reaches the bridge." And he does, lowering the pace of fear and raising the pace of memory. Hour 34. The pages begin to feel heavy, not just with ink, but with the weight of his own past. The first kiss, the first fight, the first fear of losing what he had found with Eleanor. He writes with a fierceness that makes the page crackle, and he remembers a line of poetry Eleanor once loved, now echoing in his mind like a drumbeat across a battlefield. Hour 35. The night thickens again. He describes the room as if it were a theatre stage, and his life the actor, performing the hardest scene. He tells her of the night they carved a future from nothing, the way hope glowed in their hands when they believed the world would bend to their will. He signs the page with a flourish, then writes a sentence for the last page to come. "If these pages reach your hands, know that I died loving you more than fear." Hour 36. The leaves outside rustle with rain. The tent smells of damp earth and old wine. He feels a final pulse in his leg, a tremor that travels like a swift march through his body, and then a quiet that arrives like snowfall on a summer's day. He sets his pen down, but the letter is not finished. He rests his head, and his eyes close with a calm that feels like relief. Hour 37. The second night passes. He asks for nothing more than to be allowed to finish what he began. The nurse reads a few lines aloud to him from the pages, a description of Eleanor's smile, a memory of their first summer in the valley, a promise to buy a little house with a lime-washed fence. Silas's chest falls and rises in a steady rhythm, the world narrowing to the gate of his own memory, where Eleanor waits with the weathered letter in hand. Hour 38. The swelling in the leg grows too heavy for any creature to bear. The men around him speak softly of amputation, as if it were an open door to a new life. He refuses to accept this ending for a moment and then writes, as if dictating to the room itself, If I must lose a limb, let the remaining body hold the memory of your voice. The page receives the sentence, and the ink dries with a quiet, stubborn finality. Hour 39. Morning breaks again with a pale light that drifts through the tent like a pale promise. He thinks of Eleanor's letters and how she would tell him to breathe, to trust the hands of time. He writes, "I would trade every hour for a kiss from you, and I would give those kisses up again to have you home." A quiet cry escapes his lips, not of pain but of release, a small sound that marks the approaching end. Hour 40. The second day closes as a brave, quiet thing. He has written, counted, and named the pages, 40 pages, each a step toward the door of the home that waits for him in memory. If he cannot walk there, perhaps he can carry Eleanor's heart through the pages themselves. He places the last line with care. Love endures beyond the last breath, beyond even the end of a page. Hour 41. The third day arrives with a stride of cold air and a soft rain that taps the tent like a chorus of drums. He feels the world picking away at the edges, little lights in the corner of his vision, a taste of iron on his tongue, the smell of oil and earth. He settles to finish the 40 pages, the long letter a staircase he climbs with each word. Eleanor's name repeats in his head as if it has its own pulse. Hour 42. The gangrene moves slowly, but it moves with a necessity all the same. The doctor's face is set in lines of grave patience. The nurse speaks of nothing but care and rest. Silas's voice, when it comes, is a whisper of iron and rain. "Eleanor," he says, "remember our wedding day's last kiss. Keep it by your heart." He writes again, the letters forming a soft rain on the page, a sound that might be the rain outside or the sound of his own breath. Hour 43. The room grows dim, the lamp nearly spent. He can feel his fingers stiffening around the pen, but he will not let the page go unfinished. This is the hour when the pages breathe their last, as if the letters themselves are keeping him alive. He writes aloud to the empty tent, reading the lines to his own memory. "I have loved you in the bright days and in the long nights. I have loved you in the fear and in the courage. May this letter be your compass when you read it." Hour 44. The fever hovers and then withdraws, leaving a pale quiet in its wake. The 40 pages now lie arrayed around him, an archive of a life that was, and he knows the end has chosen him, but not without a fight. He speaks to Eleanor's memory with a strength that comes from two hearts beating as one. "If I cannot be with you, I will be within your reading, and I will speak to you through every line." Hour 45. The dawn of the fourth day comes with a soft, almost hopeful light. The pain is a patient, stubborn thing now. It sits and waits for him to speak again, and he speaks in slow, deliberate sentences that become the last pages of his 40-page testament to love and to home. The room fills with the quiet sound of his breathing, measured and even, as if he is laying down a map to follow for someone else to read. Hour 46. A gentle weight on the bed's edge, Mabel's hand, a quiet, faithful touch. "Sir," she whispers. "We will carry your words to her, by the river and the road to where she waits." He smiles, if a man can smile in such weather, and nods, grateful that someone is listening to his heart's last truth. He writes one more time, a sentence to anchor the entire letter. "Love is a home we carry with us, even across fields of fear." Hour 47. The fourth day stays with him, a long breath and then a deep, slow exhale. The doctor's words become softer, less clinical, more human. "We are holding, Pembroke. We will hold as long as the memory of her breath holds you." Silas's hand finds a way to align with Eleanor's imagined touch, and he writes with a tenderness that makes the ink glow with a quiet heat. Hour 48. The hours now split between memory and the weight of the pages. He reads aloud one of the longer passages to no one but the witness of his own life, the memory of a porch swing and the sound of rain on slate, the way she looked at him with a future in her eyes. He writes, "If I cannot walk you home, I will walk you through these 40 pages. The letters become a second home, and the home beats inside him with a patient, stubborn rhythm." Hour 49. The camp is quiet again, a lullaby of distant orders and the soft sigh of the tent's canvas. He sits up enough to place the last of the letters on the bed's edge, a careful arrangement that makes the 40 pages whole again. "Eleanor," he whispers, "the world is not kind to men who cannot keep their promises, but I have kept you in every word I write." Hour 50. The 5th day dawns with a pale sun and a field full of birds that seem to know nothing of war. Silas's breath is a measured drumbeat now, steady but faint. He dictates a final paragraph to the letters, a vow that the reader will feel as if it speaks from the heart itself. "I died with you in every line, and I live with you in every memory." The nurse offers him water. He takes a small sip and nods with gratitude. Hour 51. The pages lie near him, a small mountain of paper that will travel the long way home. He feels his strength slip further toward the quiet edge of night, and then, with a last deliberate effort, he taps the page with a steady hand and writes a line that will be the last line of the 40 pages. "Love, always, your Silas." Hour 52. The world softens around him. The voices fade to a hush, and his own breath becomes a tiny, patient sound. He closes his eyes, but the memory of Eleanor remains vivid. The scent of rain on old wood, the whisper of her voice when she said his name, the weight of a letter that would travel across the miles to bring him back to the woman who waited. The 40 pages rest in their quivering line, complete. Hour 53. The final hours press in. Silas speaks no more, but his heart keeps time with the pages. 1 page, then 2, then all of them, until at last he breathes his last. A long, quiet exhale that seems to drift into the morning light, like a sigh released after a long siege. Hour 54. The room grows hushed. Mabel sits by the edge of the bed, listening to the stillness as if listening for a distant drum. The doctor checks the pulse, finds it soft and certain no longer. He nods, and Eleanor's name stands between the living and the dead as if a bridge has finally been crossed by a couple who never stopped walking toward home. Hour 55. The first touch of dawn arrives, thin blue light in the tent, when someone picks up the 40 pages, bound at the corner with a strip of old ribbon Silas never would have trusted to anyone else's hands. The nurse nods. The courier's voice on the verge of breaking as he says, "We'll take these, ma'am, these pages that hold your husband's voice." She cannot speak for a moment, then she whispers, "Yes, we will take them." The papers are carried away with a reverence that makes the war outside slip away for a heartbeat. Hour 56. Eleanor's home is far away, but the letters will reach her in the same way the wife's heart reaches out across a battlefield and finds its reply in a quiet, weathered promise. The world continues, and with it, the memory of Silas Pembroke, his stubborn love, his 40 pages, the 6 days that became a life. Thus ends the 6 days, not in the glory of triumph, but in the quiet, stubborn, unbreakable fidelity of a man who chose to write a whole life into 40 pages for the woman he loved. The mail will carry his pages home, and Eleanor will read them as a testament that even in death a soldier can still give his beloved a living memory of him, hour by hour, page by